As a man, what was it like evolving from a Christian perspective to an atheist perspective to a spiritual one? Do you believe you have a soul? And how do you know? My boyfriend, after having a near-death experience, is now saying he doesn't know if he has a soul and doesn't know if any kind of, quote, God exists. Before the near-death experience, we were on the same page as we believed in having a soul and that there was something more to existence than what we can see. If he can't recognize his soul, how can he recognize mine?
Wow, very deep question.
It is. We need Paul Check for this one, I think.
Are you sure I'm the guy to answer this question? I'm happy to jump in here and so my path from the Christian perspective to atheist, scientific materialist, and then just kind of where I reside now. Grew up Christian. If you've listened to the show at all, you know that. I kind of just went with the flow of Christianity because it worked.
Yeah.
And I knew nothing else.
Life was comfortable.
Until I was in college. And I actually went to a Christian college where the curriculum for the school required history of religion, of Christianity, history of the 4 or 5 major religions of the world, and then psychology, sociology, and then a kind of senior project of developing your worldview. And it's funny, and I don't know if this was their intention or not, but when I started to pop the hood on Christianity and other world religions, I was just like, oh, wow, nobody knows. Nobody has any clue.
Yeah.
And to me, there's nothing except a pretty intense leap everywhere you look in order to get as articulate about a particular, God definition or where we come from, what's our purpose definition as that of mainstream religions. And so I left Christianity in college. I was kind of like in the closet for a while, but came out, probably 1 or 2 years after college very firmly. And I actually thought it was all bullshit, not just Christianity, but all religion and spirituality at large. And so I went into what I would probably call atheist just because I was listening to a lot of like Sam Harris and
do you think it was
Richard
more
Dawkins
like,
and
you wouldn't describe it as like agnostic?
Probably agnostic, most likely agnostic, which a lot of those guys say they're agnostic, but their label is atheist. So like Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins are famous atheists, but I've heard them both say, well, I'm agnostic,
It's just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. And I'm not going to put all my, what is the saying?
Eggs in one basket.
All my eggs in one basket because I don't know. That's kind of where you were at, I think.
Yeah. And I'm still there. I'm in a sacred I don't know. That being said, I experience a metaphysical component to this reality through a diverse and ever-growing array of practices, which started with, most notably, a pretty intense psychedelic journey when I was 27. And has also, over the last 7 or 8 years, included time in nature. It's included sex, prayer and meditation, breath work, the death of a loved one, the birth of my siblings' children, and just seeing the vibrancy of a child, our reconciliation, and some moments in that. And for me, I don't think about God as this like character, this person. I don't personify God necessarily. I just kind of categorize the beautiful unknown and the mystery as God. And I tend to, my greatest teacher in this experience has been Paul Check, and he has a beautiful system for articulating spirit, articulating the soul, and God. And I tend to put most of my eggs in that basket if I was to be forced to put my eggs in a basket. I've been on some really incredible experiences with Paul, and through his guidance, have really been unable to poke holes in his architecture of this experience much. And so I don't personally get hung up on the names at this point.
Yeah.
What is a soul? Paul's got a definition for it. That sounds good to me. But is a soul this very specific, definite, tangible component to each one of us? I don't know, dude. I don't know. Does it matter? Like, does it matter if you believe there's a soul and I don't? But the fruits of my life suggest that I love others. I have love for myself. I take responsibility for my actions. I hold myself accountable to the best version of myself. I'm not just a net positive, but I'm actually thirsty for growth. And so I have an ability to observe my behavior and my emotions and make decisions on how I behave based on what I believe to be, the best version of myself. And so it's just not an easy thing to answer. And frankly, I don't really care that much about, do you believe in God? Do you believe in a soul? I do think there's something, and it's so mysterious. I have been God given a really dense nervous system. I wish I had like visions and shit. I don't. I'm like really pragmatic and rational, and it takes music and breath work and psychedelics and being around people like Paul to crack that open for me and experience the more mystical things behind this materialistic universe. And I think that I've had enough of them to really know that there's something. But I will be the last one to try to claim that I have any sort of deep understanding or deep ability to be able to articulate exactly what it is. Mm-hmm. So I do believe there's a soul. I do believe there's a God. I believe God is so vast, we'll never get to a fraction of understanding. But yeah, to answer the question, I'm totally on board with the idea. I think there was one question I want to make sure. If he can't recognize his soul, how can he recognize mine?
I know what she's, like struggling with here. It seems like, he had this near-death experience, which is crazy in and of itself. And if you go online and read near-death experiences, it usually changes people in some way, shape, or form, like for life, or at least for a time until things start to like make sense a little bit more or whatever. And so having a near-death experience, I've never had one, but have talked to people who have, and I would recommend that this girl who asked the question just like continue to have empathy and patience, because that is something that is, I guess you could say like a really deep psychedelic journey is probably similar to a near-death experience. Obviously, there's no real physical danger usually, but there is something that can die within you and be sort of like reborn. And so this is a tough situation, but I think continue to talk about it with him if he's open, hearing about his experience and why. I would continue to ask questions from a loving place, like just wanting to understand like what his experience was like, and have patience and empathy.
Yeah, it's like the God question for me is like, there's nobody out there that can explain where we come from. So at the minimum, source, I identify as God. Nobody knows where we come from. Let's call it God. Deal. Sounds good to me. What illuminates my being, my meat suit, my vessel? Mm-hmm. Is it it's a combination of chemicals and that are running through my veins, and experiences that are going on in my brain that are giving me a perception of this reality and a perception of myself. Great. There's still an initiation point from that. And there's something between the initiation point and the way that I'm acting now. And that seems to be soul. That seems to be this
animating
intelligence. Yeah.
There's a creative animating intelligence that exists in all of us in every piece of nature. there's an organizing intelligence. Just look at the Fibonacci sequence, look at patterns in nature, patterns that also like match the human body. There is something that is unexplainable by just regular science. So many questions that are like, yeah, scientists don't know. We don't know, and we probably never will. But the last thing I'll say is, even if you have different spiritual beliefs, I personally think that that's okay. If you still have, if you still have aligned core values as partners where, like honesty and work ethic and, these things that are, you would consider core values to your life, if those are still similar and you're still like enjoying life together, I personally don't think it really matters that much if you don't believe the exact same thing when it comes to your spiritual life.
Yeah, I think the part that for me that would lead to problems would be if you go down the rabbit trail of, okay, there's no God, there's no meaning, there's no purpose, then you're in nihilism.
Yeah.
And then you get in kind of a depressive, dark state.
Yeah.
And I've actually heard that from a lot of scientific materialists and atheists who've kind of come back around to this idea of, at the minimum, there's a metaphysical purpose for me. It could look different for everybody, but it is somewhat unique to me. A book recommendation, The 7 Hermetic Principles. It's an old book called The Kybalion, a study of the Hermetic philosophy. This pulls really, really ancient philosophies from Greece and Egypt that I found during my scientific materialistic era to be a nice bridge into opening my mind to more metaphysical concepts, because it's like really, really based in like science, like rationalism. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for listening.
If you enjoyed that, check out right over here for some more fun clips.
Oh, and you're going to want to subscribe.
Bye.